Hi, and welcome to the Reporting Hub video demo. My name is Brian with the Reporting Hub, and I'll be walking you through the platform today. We can go through each of the different items listed here one by one. Now, this is going to be a detailed demonstration, and it will take several minutes to go through each one of these. So this is meant for more of a deeper dive into the platform. We do also have a short explainer video on the website if you're just looking for a short overview. So let's get started. So today we'll begin talking about installation and getting started. So I'm going to navigate to our website, and from here, there's several places where you can go to get started. Any one of these buttons will take you there. The Start Now, Get Started, Start a Trial, if you use the Install Today. I'll click there and it will open up a checklist, and this will go through what you need in order to install the Reporting Hub. So you do require an active Azure subscription. You must be a global administrator and subscription owner within that Azure subscription. And this is because we're installing an application to your Azure environment as well as some Azure resources. So you do need an elevated permission in order to do this. You also are agreeing to install the Azure services that are required for the Reporting Hub, and this link will take you to those, and we can talk a little bit more about those in a minute. And you're also agreeing that basically you are going to be in control of your own Azure resources. You are responsible for paying for those resources. You're responsible for administering them after they're deployed. So it's basically your responsibility because the application is deployed within your Azure environment. So once you click these checkboxes, you can click the Install Now, and that will take you to our installer application. Now you can also click More Info or see Guided Tutorial here, and that will take you to our Knowledge Center. Now our Knowledge Center is docs.thereportinghub.com. You can also get there from our website by clicking the Learn button right here. And we have a whole section dedicated to deployment and installation. So if I go through, you can notice here I have a self-serve guided install. It tells me the same information that was on the website here. You can click here and that will take you to our install wizard. There's also a video that you can walk through step by step to show you how to install the software. And there's also screenshots for each step involved in the process. So it's very simple, a lot of information available to you to install the Reporting Hub. Now, going back to the required Azure services that we talked about earlier. So this section here where you're agreeing to install the required Azure services. So to use the Reporting Hub, you do require several Azure services. So here we have a documentation specifically for what you need in order to proceed. So you need a Power BI embedded capacity, you need an Azure App Service, you need an Azure SQL database, and you need an Azure translator. Now our installation wizard will install all of these for you, but if you prefer to install them beforehand, you can do that as well. So within our documentation, we go through each one of these resources, tell you which the best practice for what to get started with. We also provide the link to the Microsoft documentation so you can better understand pricing and everything involved with the Microsoft Azure resource for each one of the resources required. So once you've successfully deployed the software and it's installed within your Azure environment, you can go ahead and begin using it. Now, there's a couple things you do need to do first. So again, if you follow along in our documentation here, you can see that there are a few settings you need to enable within the Power BI service. So you must be an admin to do so. So go through and follow our documentation to go through and make sure you have the proper settings within Power BI. And essentially what these settings are doing is they're basically allowing the Reporting Hub access to your Power BI environment. So you go through, follow along, enable those. There's also documentation on how to properly configure your Power BI workspaces. So in order for your Power BI workspace to be available to be accessed by the Reporting Hub, you must grant it permission. So this documentation goes through step by step on how to grant access to the Reporting Hub to your workspace. So you'll need to go ahead and understand that concept and how to do that. It's quite simple. Just follow along, follow step by step, and this will show you how to do that. Now, once you've done that, you're ready to go. So you can now start using the Reporting Hub. All your permissions have been assigned. All your workspaces are now accessible. So the Reporting Hub can go ahead and be accessed and open, and you can start configuring and going through the setup. And the first thing you're going to want to do is basically set your landing page. So as a next step, I'll open up the application and we'll go through that. Okay, so I have the application open here now. So after it is deployed, you will see there will be a landing page here that we have put in place for you, and that's just giving you the step-by-step. That's also in our documentation about enabling your Power BI settings and doing your landing page setup. So you can go ahead and replace that landing page with whatever you want. And this landing page could be really anything. It could be a Power BI report. It could be a URL of a different website if you have the appropriate subscription for the reporting hub. But to go ahead and change that, you just simply go into manage content. And then once you've deployed, you won't have any of these. These I've added since. You'll just have the home, your home page. You can go and then set your Power BI content for your home page. And the thing to note about the home page is the home page does not allow you to assign permissions to it, because this is your landing page for everybody to access. So everybody that lands on your application will have access to that landing page. So that's a key thing to keep in mind. Now, also a quick note about after we're deployed, you will notice that your URL is going to be it's going to be an Azure website's URL. That's kind of a default URL based on an Azure application that gets created within your environment. So you can go ahead and do your own DNS setup to make the custom URL whatever you want. And that's a great thing about the reporting hub, is that the URL can be defined by you, so it becomes 100% white label from the URL down. So next we're going to talk about some of the administrative capabilities of the reporting hub. Specifically right now, we're going to talk about the Power BI capacity settings. So let's go back to the application. And as a platform administrator, you will have all of these admin settings available to you. So these are only available to administrators of the reporting hub. Your regular users would not see any of this stuff. So they would only see really your navigation and your pages and that kind of thing. So this is strictly for administrators. So we want to go to Power BI settings. So after we've deployed the reporting hub and we've deployed our appropriate Azure resources and we've gone through all the documentation about Power BI embedded and managing your Power BI embedded capacity. So this is where we're going to go and set up how we want the reporting hub to manage our Power BI embedded capacity. There are two ways that the reporting hub is going to control your capacity. So the first way is we can allow the reporting hub to activate and pause the capacity based on users actually accessing the site. So by default, the reporting hub will keep your capacity in the paused state unless it requires it to be used. So when your user goes and logs in, the reporting hub will then activate your capacity so that they can actually use your Power BI content. After the user has either logged out or has gone inactive, the reporting hub will then pause your capacity again. Now, when it's paused, you're not paying for it. When it's active, you are paying for it. So the reporting hub is going to make sure that it keeps your capacity on when it needs to be and off when it doesn't need to be. So this embedded timeout period allows you to set a timeout time after there's no activity. So if you want it to turn off after 5 minutes of inactivity, 45 minutes of inactivity, that's up to you. And basically what that means is, after 30 minutes of inactivity, the reporting hub says, hey, nobody's using any of your Power BI content right now. It's been 30 minutes, so it's going to go ahead and pause your capacity. Now, the other way we can control our capacity is we can set schedules when we want it to turn off and turn on and off automatically. So we need our capacity to be active when our reports refresh. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have a report refresh schedule set in Power BI, so let's say every morning at 7 a.m. your reports are set to refresh. So we need to make sure our capacity is active so that our reports can actually refresh. So in this case, I can set a window of time that I want my capacity to be active. So I always want to make sure that I set my schedule a minute or two before my refresh schedule in Power BI. So if it starts at 7 a.m., I'm going to start my capacity at 6:58. This will just ensure that it's on, because it does take a few seconds to start up. So in this case, we cover any of that time. So again, I can set my time when I want that to turn on, and I can set the duration. And this duration is really going to be dependent by how long you want your capacity on. If you're doing it based on a refresh schedule, your reports may only take 1 minute or 20 seconds to refresh. They may take 10 minutes to refresh. So you can go ahead and set this time. And what this is doing is this will basically say, every morning at 6:58 a.m., your capacity will be active for 9 minutes. And then after that 9 minutes, it will then go back into the paused state. So I can go ahead and add as many of these as I want throughout the day. So I can start and stop my capacity based on my timeline. And then if I want to pause one, I can enable it or disable it. And then I can go ahead and add these, and this will then control my capacity based on my needs. Next, we're going to talk about editing your theme. So the Reporting Hub is a 100% white label application. So you can make it look any way you want. You can match your corporate identity. You can add your branding. You can add your logos. You know, when you're done, it will look exactly like you want it to look. So we're back in the application right now. As an administrator, I'm going to go and edit my theme. So I click that, and it will open up my admin settings here for theme. You'll notice there's a few different tabs. There's my branding, there's my theme and layout, I have colors, and I have fonts. So first, let's actually talk about themes and layouts. So depending on which subscription you have, you need to have a business or above to have access to multiple layouts. If you have an essentials, you'll just have access to classic. Now, what this is these are 3 different app layouts. So it really is just personal preference. You know, which one of these do you like best? So you can pick the classic layout, a modern layout, or a minimal layout. And these different layouts kind of focus on different areas, have different, basic app look and feels. But it's really for you to pick and choose which one you like best. So after you've, set on your app layout, and just for reference, we're actually in the modern theme right now, just for context. So after you've picked your layout, I'm going to go back to branding here, and there's several different things that I have available to me to customize. So I have my logo. So right now we have a Reporting Hub logo here, and I can choose edit my logo. I can select my image. I can choose the alignment of that image, and then I can choose the sizing of how I want that to be sized within my app. So I can make those changes. I click apply, and I do have to click save changes to make any of the changes I've made be applied. Now, this second logo here is when I minimize my panel, we have just the logo up here. So this allows you to select that logo. We also have a favicon here, so you can put your little browser tab icon, and that will customize the browser tab based on your image that you put in here. Now, depending on which authentication scheme you use, you can set your background image. So if you're using Reporting Hub authentication, you can choose your welcome text and your background image, and that appears on login. If you're using any of the other authentication schemes like Microsoft Single Sign-On, or maybe you're using Auth or OpenID, these won't really apply because you're going to be customizing the login experience through Microsoft or through any of the other providers that you may be using. You can also set your custom loader. And what a custom loader is when the report actually loads, by default, it's going to load with the little Power BI logo spinner. Now, if you don't want the Power BI logo, you can put your own custom loader. This could be an image, this could be a GIF file, and this basically replaces the Power BI icon spinner, so you can customize that even further. Now, we also have the ability to choose if you want your footer on or off. So you can choose there to be a footer on or off. You can put the footer text. You can put a URL for that. So you could make it maybe a help desk link. You could have it jump to a website. It's really up to you how you use that, but that is an active hyperlink that you can set. You can also add a secondary logo. And what this secondary logo is this allows you to co-brand the app. So you have your primary logo here, and then underneath that, you would actually have a secondary logo. And a common use case for this is adding a customer logo to personalize the site for a specific customer maybe, or a specific department. It just gives you another opportunity to add a secondary logo. Now, you can also put an external link. In our case, we've created a Get Help button, but you can make this whatever you want. If you want to, make this link to a website or a support desk or really anything, you can set the URL for that button, and you can name that button, and that just gives you a place to jump your users based on whatever link you'd like. Now we're going to go to colors. You can see there's a lot of different color options available. Really, everything is color configurable. Every font color, every panel within the app is independently controlled. Every outline color, really, drop down colors, hover colors, all the different colors can be configured. So you can really make the app look however you want. You can make it look dark theme, light theme, colorful theme. You can really play around with the colors and get it looking exactly how you want. The other thing we can do is set our font. Now this is a global font for the entire site, the entire app. So whatever you choose here will be applied throughout, but you do have, really every Google font and then some to choose from. And once you set that, that will then get applied to your overall application. So once you've set your branding and your colors and your layouts and your fonts, you just go ahead and save changes and that will be applied. And you can come back and change this as many times as you'd like. Now let's talk about embedding Power BI content. So back to the app, I'm going to go to Manage Content. Now a global administrator could do this, and as well could a content administrator. Those are two roles within the Reporting Hub that allow you to manage content. A content administrator role allows you to manage content, but you don't have access to any of these other administrative functions. So I opened up my manage content page here, and you can see that I can manage my navigation. So this is going to be my navigation structure that my users will see. So our navigation is quite simple. It's made up of categories and content pages. The little icon here represents a category. I can click on that. It will open it up and show me the content pages within that category. I can have nested categories if I'd like to have drop downs within my categories. I can go ahead and create this any way I would like. So first, let's go and add a category. So I'm going to say add new, create category, and I have a little window here to fill out. So I can say, hey, here's my new category for my content. I can choose my icon. We have, I think it's around 19,000 icons to choose from, so no shortage of icons to pick for putting an icon on your category. I go ahead and click save, and that will then create my category. To change my sort order, I just click change sort order, and I can drag and drop and save those changes. Now, if I want to add a Power BI content page and actually embed content within a specific category, I'll go in and I'll click this plus button here. So I have a sales reporting category and I want to add a Power BI content page. So in this case, I'm going to say add content page. It's going to open up my create navigation form here. So if I've just come from Power BI and added a new report, I may want to click refresh workspaces if I've just gone ahead and done that. There is a bit of a delay sometimes if we publish a report for it to be available in the Reporting Hub, just because there's a syncing time sometimes within the Power BI service. So we want to click refresh workspaces. If it's been there for a while, you don't have to worry about that. So I name my report. In this case, I'm just going to call it my new report. I can choose an icon. If I want to for my report, I don't have to. I can leave it blank. I can put a description as well. I can also leave that blank. So I'm going to come back and talk about dynamic binding later, but for now, we're just going to leave this toggled off. So dynamic binding basically allows us to, choose a report and a data set that are separate from one another, and we can dynamically bind. Now, this is only available on our commercial tier. So in this case, you're not going to see it if you don't have the commercial. So we're going to ignore it for now. So you can see that I have an option to select my Power BI workspace. So this is going to be synced with your Power BI service. So earlier we talked about, you have to grant permissions to you have to add the Reporting Hub as permission to your workspace. So as long as you've done that, that workspace will show up here. So I'm going to choose a workspace where my content resides. The reporting will then go and fetch that content from there, and you will see that I have a drop down of all the reporting content that's within that workspace. In this case, I can choose my report that I want to embed, and I can select the pages. So depending on how many pages you have here, you can choose all pages. That will, it will embed all of the pages, the tabs within your Power BI file, but you can also choose individual pages or multiple pages if you only want to select, 2 pages, even though you may have 10. So we can pick and choose the individual pages. We then have some page properties as well that we can toggle on or off. I'll speak to this in the next section, but this gives me some configuration ability on my page to say, whether I want to include my different features. So next we're going to assign permissions. So by default, the Reporting Hub is going to work with Azure Active Directory, but you can configure it to work with different authentication schemes. I talk about that a little later, but for now, we're just going to assume we are using the default Azure Active Directory. This is synced to your Azure AD. So all of your groups will show up here. So I simply click on this start typing in my Azure AD name. I click to select that, and basically what this means is this security group from Azure Active Directory now has permission to this report. I can put as many security groups as I want here. I can also type individual email address, user email addresses if I so choose. Here's where I can assign editing privileges for that security group or user. So if I want that user to be able to edit content, I assign it here, and I can not allow it if I choose not to. And again, this is only available on certain subscriptions, so you may not see this. I can also choose a sort order here as well if I'd like to do that now rather than dragging and dropping later. So it's that simple to embed a content page. We simply click save, and you've now embedded a Power BI content within the reporting hub. So next is content page and report options. So back to the app, let's navigate to an individual report. So we just finished embedding a content page within the reporting hub. So let's go to an embedded report page here. And just to go through the different elements of the page itself. So we have in the top left here, we have our title and our description. Across the top here, we have what's called our content pane. So these are the tabs or the pages that I've selected from my Power BI workbook when I embedded it. So if in this case, I only embedded 4 pages, and I may have had more, but I just chose these 4. And these again are the pages within my Power BI report, and I can flip between these. I also have my filter pane available to be used if you so choose. There's a report options button as well, which has different report options that would be available. And all of these different things that I'm going through right now are configurable. So you can choose which ones you would like to enable and which ones you would like to disable. So much of it is personal preference. So some people don't like using the filter pane. Maybe they use slicers instead. Some people don't like using the tabs for navigation. Maybe they use buttons within their report itself, like drill throughs. In this case, I can go drill through, or a back button. So I may not use my content pane. I may also not want a title or description because maybe I put it in my report, and maybe I want to maximize my report so it takes up as much of the screen as possible. So I can actually toggle off a lot of these different page properties. So we also have our user bookmarks here, which then I can go and add a bookmark. I have my favorites. Favorites these are both user specific. So a user can go and add specific reports to their favorites list. And once they're in a report, they can create bookmarks for that specific report if they want to as well. So the different report options that are available to me, I can allow a user to edit right in the reporting hub. So if I have this enabled for a specific permission security group, I can come and say edit report, and I can go into edit mode, and I can actually allow my users to edit right in the reporting hub. I can then go and close out of editing. I can also go full screen mode if I'm in a presentation or a boardroom maybe, and I want to highlight the report. I can go ahead and do that. I can also create a shareable link. So this creates a URL link that I can email to people if I want to give them access to the report. I can choose whether I want them to log in. I can choose whether I want to send the full page or not. And I can also set an expiry on that link. So if I send it to somebody, but I only want to make it available for 24 hours, I can go ahead and create a URL link and send that over email. I can also export. So similar to the Power BI service, I have my different formats to choose from here, and I have my export parameters. I have my all pages or my current page only. I can also choose whether I want to export with the current filters applied or in the default format. And I simply click export, and it will go ahead and export my report for me. I can also schedule an email, and this is a really great new feature we have. This allows you to basically schedule an exported report for email delivery. And this would come from an email that you would set up via the SMTP setup process within the reporting hub, which is a different topic, but to actually export the email is very simple. We just go to the report that we want to schedule the email for. We choose the format, we set the parameters, we say, hey, it's to, and we type in different email addresses here. We can put our subject. So here's your monthly report email. And I can put when I want that schedule to start. Maybe I want it to start, tomorrow at whatever time, and it can end at whatever time. Maybe, 6 months or a year later, you can schedule that to end. You can choose your frequency, so hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, annually. You can type in your email copy or your content, so what you want your email to say, and this email will be delivered with your company's logo. It will also have the information that you've inputted, and it will also provide a button that will navigate back to the reporting hub. So it will automatically create a hyperlink button in your email that will direct your user back to the actual your application and that report. So a really great new feature. So now that we've gone through our content page and report options, let's now go and see how we configure these to show up in our content pages or not. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my manage content, and remember we are looking at our sales dashboard here. So let's go manage content. I'm going to navigate to my sales dashboard, click on that, and you can see that I have these different fields available to me to choose from. So I have my filter, my content pane, so I can choose to show my filter pane or not, my content pane, my title or description. Do I want to allow sharing or exporting? So I can toggle each one of these on or off, and my page will update accordingly. The other thing I can do here is choose allow editing or not. So if I disable that, this security group or user will not be allowed to edit. If I have that, they will. So I can go ahead and pick and choose these different elements, and they will show up based on that selection that I've made. So let's go ahead and turn off our filter pane and our content pane. I don't want to show our title and description. We're not going to allow exporting or editing or sharing. Let's go ahead and save those changes and see how it updates our report. So let's navigate back to our report. And there you go, you can see that our title and description are gone, our content pane is gone, our filter pane is gone. I can no longer export or do any of those different report options because I've disabled them all. So now you can see that you have control over the different page properties and what you would like to show or not show. Managing your users and different authentication options. So let's go back to the app. And first, let's talk about authentication. So depending on which subscription tier you will have different options available to you for authenticating your users. So by default, the reporting hub uses Azure Active Directory. So to start, we're going to go to app settings. And when you install the reporting hub, you will install it with Microsoft Single Sign-On. And then if you have essentials, you'll be using the reporting hub authentication scheme, and if you want to upgrade to business, you can start using Microsoft Single Sign-On, and then from enterprise and up, you have different options available to you then again. So first, let's go to our authentication schemes within our app settings. So I went to my app settings area here. Now I'm going to auth schemes here. And you'll see that I have two that are available to me. Right now I have the Microsoft Single Sign-On authentication option. And what that is Microsoft's Microsoft 365 login. So if you want to use multi-factor authentication through Microsoft, you can use that authentication. It will allow you to do so. If you don't want to use multi-factor and you want to use the reporting hub, you can use the reporting hub. They both use Azure Active Directory in the back end in terms of user management, but the big difference is you get the single sign-on experience with Microsoft, with Microsoft SSO, and you can also take advantage of multi-factor with that one as well. Now, if you wanted to add another authentication scheme, maybe you wanted to use Auth0 or Auth0 or OpenID. Those are all available to you within the reporting hub. So I clicked on new auth scheme. From there, I can name my authentication scheme. So in this case, maybe I want to create a new Auth0 one. I now pick from my menu of different authentication options. So these are the ones that are currently available with the reporting hub. These are out of the box configurable. So you can choose the authentication scheme you'd like to configure. You would of course do this setup on your end. And in this case, you're coming in and putting in your endpoints and different URLs and such based on the authentication scheme. So you would go and you would add that auth scheme, you'd click save. You would then verify whether it's working or not. You'd get a verified check that, hey, it's working, good news. I can now go and apply that authentication scheme to my tenant. So in this case, we have two, but if I wanted to add more, I could. So now that I have my different authentication schemes added, I can go to my tenant admin area, and this is where I manage my tenants. So whether you have one tenant or you have multiple tenants, it doesn't really matter the same process applies in terms of adding a authentication scheme to a tenant. So again, by default, you're probably going to have Microsoft Single Sign-On or the Reporting Hub, depending on which subscription. To change that, you can go to your global tenant here. So your global tenant is going to be identified as the first in your list. It's also going to have this global tenant identifier here. You're going to want to come and edit that. And you'll notice that there is the authentication scheme option for your tenant here. So if you did want to change from Reporting Hub to Microsoft Single Sign-On, this is where you do it. You'd click your drop down and all the auth schemes that you've added and verified will show up here. So if we have added that Autka one, I could then go and select Autka. And once you've done that, you can now use that authentication scheme with the Reporting Hub. And the nice thing is, if you're running a multi-tenant environment, each tenant can have its own auth scheme depending on how you set it up. So you could have your global tenant could be running on Microsoft Single Sign-On. You could have a subtenant that's running on Autka. So how you set it up is very flexible and entirely up to you. So once you've added your authentication scheme and then applied it to your tenant, you now need to sync to the Reporting Hub. So syncing your auth scheme to your Reporting Hub is very simple. Let's go there now. So let's cancel out of here. From now, we're going to go to Manage Groups. Again, this is in our main admin settings here. We have this Manage Groups area here. This is going to take me to where I can sync to my auth scheme. So depending on if you're using Azure AD or any of the others, you would come and click Sync Groups, and this is going to sync to that auth scheme. So once you've synced, all your groups and users will show up here, and you can then assign different permissions or app roles, and these would be user, content administrator, application, or if you're using Azure AD, you have the option to identify a parent group as well. And this is a content administrator can manage content only, and app administrator can manage everything, all your different admin functions, and your user can't do any administrative functions. They can just view content as you grant permissions. So this is where all your groups will show up after they've synced. And from here, you just simply add them to as you're adding content, you assign these groups to your content pages. The other thing you can do here is you can actually impersonate a user. So if you have a new customer or you want to test out role level security or something like that, you can come and impersonate a user and see how the app looks as that user, which is a really neat function and very useful. At any point within the application, you see this little icon as well. So if you want to learn more about managed groups or you're not exactly sure, you can click that little icon. It's going to give you a little bit of a description here, but then you can also click Learn More, and it will take you to the relevant page in our Knowledge Center and explain more about that. So you can always click there and learn more and read more about any of these different topics that we're going through today within our Knowledge Center. And this is just an example how you can help navigate to that from the app. So next, we'll discuss managing multiple tenants. By default, the Reporting Hub is a multi-tenant application. So you can have one tenant, you can have multiple tenants, you can actually have unlimited tenants. It depends on which subscription tier you subscribe to, but basically it's really up to you how you manage your environment. And let me show you how we can go ahead and do that. So let's go to our app settings here. That's going to take me to my tenant admin. So always first you'll have your global tenant. So if you're an Essentials customer, you will just have one tenant and you will only ever have just the global. If you're a business, you will have 3 tenants, or if you're enterprise or commercial, you can have unlimited tenants. So your first one is always noted as your global, and then all your other tenants will be listed below. From there, what we can do is we can add a new tenant. So I can simply click Add New Tenant. I can call this tenant whatever I'd like. So let's call this, new customer. I can actually set the language of this tenant. So if I've gone and configured a different language in my app settings, I can then go assign that language to this tenant. So the neat thing is all my different tenants can have different languages. So I could have a German tenant or a French tenant and an English tenant. You can actually configure that any way you'd like. And here's where I set my authentication scheme for my tenant. Earlier, we were talking about auth schemes, and this is where we apply it. So we can, again, if it's a different tenant, we can have a different auth scheme. We can use the same auth scheme. It's entirely up to you. Each tenant can also have its own Google Analytics tracking. So if you set up a Google Analytics code, you can then apply that here, just copy and paste it here, and that will allow you to track your Google Analytics for this specific tenant. Now, by default, the Reporting Hub is going to create this URL based on your domain. It's going to create this, /account/tenant/ whatever you've called your tenant here. Now, if you're a commercial customer, you can actually go then and customize this. So you could actually have customer specific or tenant specific domains that you can assign at the tenant level, which is a brand new feature actually, and we're quite excited about it. So we can also assign individual capacities at the tenant level. So each tenant could run on its own unique capacity, or we could share capacity across multiple tenants. It's entirely flexible and up to you. Now, each tenant can be assigned specific workspaces as well. So what this means is this tenant only has access to this workspace. So the very common use case is it allows us to create segregation from Power BI to the reporting hub. So we can have a customer specific workspace in Power BI and a customer specific tenant in the reporting hub. And I can assign it that so that this tenant does not have access to other workspaces. So even though the reporting hub may have access to, all of your workspaces, this specific tenant only has access to that one. So it really allows us to delegate administration privileges. It allows us to create a segregated environment, which is a big plus. Now we can also set an expiration date on this tenant. So if I may be billing this as a service to my customers, I can enable this tenant to be active for a certain amount of time. And again, if I'm a commercial customer and I want to use our internal billing mechanism, I can come and assign that here as well. Everyone else wouldn't see this. If you're below a commercial, you wouldn't see these product billing options available to you, but they're there for the commercial tier. Now, a brand new feature as well is at the point of tenant creation, we can tell Power BI to create a new workspace. So as I'm creating a new tenant, I can actually toggle this on. And what that's going to do is when I click save and create this tenant, the reporting hub's automatically going to create a corresponding workspace in my Power BI service that's attached to this tenant. So you don't have to use that. You can leave it toggled off. You just have to manually come and assign your workspace like we did here in this case. So adding a new tenant is very simple. Once I create that tenant, it is going to go and then make a tenant that is a segregated environment, whether it's for a customer or for a department, entirely up to you how you use that. So after I've created my new tenant, it will show up in my list here. To simply open that tenant, I can click on my action item here. You'll see I have a few different options. I can use this tenant, which means I could actually jump into this tenant as an administrator. I could clone this if I wanted to just simply duplicate it for another purpose. I can also edit it. So I can edit it and you can see that I have my domain name. You can see my groups I've been assigned. So in this case, I have my administrator security group from Active Directory here. I have my parent group as well from Active Directory. And this is because, of course, we're using by default Azure Active Directory, but you would come and assign your administrator group to this tenant if you're using a different auth scheme as well. And here you could cancel this, you could delete this tenant as well. You could actually turn it off in terms of leave it without deleting it. You can make it non-active. So if you wanted to pause a tenant for whatever reason, you can do that. So let's cancel out of here. And from a user perspective, let's go back to the main app. If my user has been assigned permission or access to multiple tenants, those different tenants will show up to me as a user under my drop-down menu here. So you can see I have a section called user tenants, and you can see I have 2 different tenants that are available to me. So depending on, if I have 5 or 10 tenants that I have permission to, those will all show up in my drop-down. If I have more than 4, I'll have a little scroll bar. I can also search here as well. So I can choose my default tenant. So when I log in, I will log in automatically to my default tenant. I can set my default tenant by selecting a different tenant here by setting that default. And the highlighted one notes which tenant I'm currently in. And to switch between tenants, I just simply click on the different tenants and that will then jump me into that tenant. So this only applies when you have access permission granted to multiple tenants. The other thing that you'll want to note here is your permissions are carried forward depending on what you've been granted within that tenant. So if I have global administrator in this tenant, but in this tenant, I'm just a basic user, when I jump over to here, I will not have global admin in this tenant. I'll just be a basic user. So permissions are honored depending on which tenant you're in. The last thing we're going to discuss today is managing your subscription. So back to the app. To access your subscription, you're going to want to go to App Settings. Once there, you'll see there's a subscription tab. So depending on which subscription you have, it will show up here. And you'll notice that it says which license type we have. Below, you'll have all of your different monthly or annual invoices depending on which term you have. Those will all show up here as different transactions, and you can click here and get your invoice if you'd like to export it or view it from your history. You can also go and compare plans. So if you're not sure which plan you want, or you want to compare them based on different feature sets, you can go here and look at all those different features. To make a change to your plan, you can click Update Subscription, and here's where you would fill out your information. You would choose the plan you want to purchase. So if I'm currently an Essentials customer and then I want to upgrade to Business, I simply click Business. I put my term here. It will tell me the cost and some basic features that are there. I put my credit card information in. I make sure I read the privacy policy and terms and conditions, and I check that I've read those, and then I can go ahead and place my order. So at any point in time, you can change your order. So you can go from an Essentials to Business up to an Enterprise, or you can actually go backwards as well. So if you want to downgrade your subscription, you can do that. The one thing to note is when you do make a change to your subscription, that change will be seen right away. So it will ask you to log out and log back in, and then you'll have all the new features available to you based on that subscription change. And that concludes the demo for today. If you'd like to reach out and learn more, feel free to contact us via the website. You can schedule a live demonstration where we'll take you through the app over a Teams call. If you'd like to email us, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. You can get started today, of course, visiting our website. And please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.